What I'm the most proud of is my family, my children, and I see my husband through them. I have three magnificent boys. But for him to come on stage, I knew it was very hard for him, and he did that for us.
You're standing in the cold air of a Montreal winter, just 15 years old, watching a black casket carry away the man who taught you how to hold a golf club and how to hold your head high. That's exactly how he experienced it. Celine Dion's oldest son, Rene-Charles Angélil, didn't just lose a father that day, he lost his North Star under the unforgiving gaze of a global spotlight. From that shattering silence to the private battles of a son shielding his legendary mother and many more tragedies, his journey is anything but golden. The day the music died. Let's talk about 10 years back. Most 15-year-olds are losing their minds over high school exams or whether their crush liked their Instagram post, right? But René-Charles, he was standing in the middle of a literal state funeral at the Notre Dame Basilica in Montreal. I'm talking cameras everywhere, thousands of people mourning, and the eyes of the entire music world boring into the back of his head. He wasn't just a grieving kid, he was the Prince of Quebec being forced to grow up in high definition. But the real tragedy wasn't just that one day in January. It was a slow, agonizing lead up to it. Imagine being a young boy in that massive Caesar's Palace suite or their Florida estate, and instead of hearing your dad's booming voice or his laugh, the house starts smelling like a hospital. René Sr. didn't just pass away suddenly, he fought throat cancer for years. René-Charles spent his most formative years, the ages where you're supposed to be rebellious and wild, watching his hero, his mentor, and his absolute rock slowly wither away. Think about the psychological toll that takes on a kid. You're watching the man who built a global empire, the guy who literally bet his house on your mom's voice, become so frail he can't even eat. René-Charles was there for the feeding tubes, the whispered conversations between doctors, and the heavy, suffocating silence that settles over a home when everyone knows the end is coming, but nobody wants to say it out loud. He had to be the big man for his younger twin brothers, Nelson and Eddie, while he was still practically a child himself. And then, the timing. Man, talk about a cosmic gut punch. His father died on January 14th. That's just 2 days before what would have been René Sr.'s 74th birthday. And it's only 11 days before René-Charles' own 15th birthday. Can you imagine? Every single year when your birthday rolls around, it's not just about cake and presents. It's a permanent anniversary of the day your world cracked open. That kind of emotional scarring doesn't just buff out with time. When he stood up at that pulpit to give the eulogy, he looked so composed. People were calling him brave and poised, but underneath that sharp suit, he was a 15-year-old kid whose childhood just ended. He promised his dad he'd pass on his values and take care of the family. That's a massive burden to put on a teenager. It's like he was handed a crown made of lead. He didn't get to just be a messy, mistake-making teen. He had to be the successor. He had to be the pillar for Celine, who was publicly falling apart. The grief of losing a father is one thing, but losing the guy who was also your career coach, your golf partner, and your bridge to the normal world? That's a whole different level of loneliness. René-Charles was left in a house full of Grammys and gold records, but the one person who could tell him how to handle it all was gone. He was the man of the house at 15, looking at a future that felt terrifyingly empty despite all the wealth in the world. He was living in a palace, but the king was dead, and the weight of that silence was deafening. And just as he started trying to figure out who he was without his father's shadow, a new, even more terrifying silence started creeping into his mother's voice, the beloved Celine Dion. Celine, a mother's silent war. If you thought the trauma ended with his dad's funeral, you have no idea. René-Charles didn't even get a chance to breathe before the next nightmare started rolling in. For a long time, the world just thought Celine was being eccentric or private, but behind those gated Vegas walls, René-Charles was watching his mother literally turn into a statue. We're talking about stiff person syndrome, SPS. It sounds like something out of a sci-fi flick, but for this family, it was a terrifying, slow-motion car crash that René-Charles had a front row seat for. On every bashing and judgment from the internet people on Celine's appearance and how she is now, there's a son trying his best to stay strong for her suffering mother. Think about the position he was in. He's in his early 20s, finally trying to find his own lane, and suddenly his mom, the woman with the most powerful voice on the planet, can't control her own muscles. In her documentary, I Am Celine Dion, there's this one scene that is absolutely soul-crushing. She has a seizure that lasts for several minutes. Her body is locked, her face is frozen in a silent scream, and she's whimpering in pain. Now, René-Charles isn't just a fan watching this on a screen. He's the guy who has to live with the reality that at any moment, his mother could have an episode that leaves her paralyzed or worse. There was a long period where they didn't even know what it was. Imagine the anxiety in that house. René-Charles had to watch his mom cancel tour after tour, making up excuses about sinus infections because she wasn't ready to tell the world she was losing control of her body. He was her vault. He had to hold that secret while the internet was being its usual toxic self, speculating about her weight or her mental health. He was essentially a 21-year-old bodyguard for her dignity. And let's be real about the orphan fear. This is a guy who already saw his dad wither away from cancer. The trauma of that doesn't just go away. So when his mom starts showing these mysterious, debilitating symptoms, his brain has to be going to the darkest place possible. Am I going to lose her, too? He became the rock for his younger brothers, Nelson and Eddie, who were just little kids when their dad died. He had to be the one to look them in the eye and try to project some kind of "we got this" energy when, deep down, he was probably just as terrified as they were. Celine has even said in interviews that her biggest worry was her kids seeing her like that. She didn't want them to be scared. But you can't hide a neurological disorder in a house where you all live together. René-Charles was there for the too many pills phase, where she was taking massive doses of Valium just to get through a performance or a rehearsal. He saw the ugly, unglamorous side of the power of love. He was the one walking her to the car, holding her arm when she was shaky, and being the physical support she needed when her own nervous system was betraying her. The weight of that responsibility is insane. Most guys his age are worried about their career or who they're dating, but he was basically a secondary caregiver. He had to put his own life on a weird kind of pause to make sure the foundation of their family didn't crumble. Every time she stepped out in public, like that surprise appearance at the 2024 Grammys, René-Charles was right there, just inches away. He wasn't there for the photo op. He was there in case her body locked up. He was her human safety net. It's a specific kind of tragedy to be the son of a legend and have to watch that legend become human in the most painful way possible. He didn't just lose his dad, he lost his superhero version of his mom. He had to trade his role as the protected son for the protector way before he was ready. It's a silent war he's been fighting alongside her for years, and even though things are looking up in 2025 and 2026, those years of high alert stress have definitely left a mark on him. He's lived a lifetime of medical crises before his 25th birthday, and that's a lot of baggage for anyone to carry while they're still trying to figure out who they are. While he was busy being the anchor for his family, he was also low-key drowning in the pressure of having a famous last name and no identity of his own. For his age, this might be as challenging as his major challenges in life. The ghost in the studio. Growing up as a crown prince of the music world sounds like a dream, right? He's the son of the queen of power ballads and pop, private jets, mansions, and the kind of bank account most people only see in movies. But for René-Charles, that gold-plated life was actually a massive cage. Imagine being 20-something and realizing the entire world doesn't see you, they just see Celine Dion's son. That is a brutal psychological trip to be on. While he was busy being the backbone for his grieving family, he was low-key suffocating under the weight of a legacy he didn't ask for, but was expected to carry. This is where the real tragedy of his identity crisis kicks in. It's that feeling of being a ghost in your own life. He didn't want to just be a professional mourner or a permanent +1 at his mom's award shows. He wanted to scream, to be loud, to be messy. So what does a kid from a ballad singing dynasty do? He goes completely the other way. He starts recording rap music, but here's the kicker. He didn't tell Celine. He didn't tell the label. He didn't tell anyone. He hopped on SoundCloud under the name Big Tip because he was desperate to know if he actually had talent or if people only clapped because of his last name. Think about the loneliness of that. You're recording tracks in a home studio, pouring your heart into a genre that's the polar opposite of My Heart Will Go On, and you're doing it in total secrecy. When his tracks actually hit #1 on the Canadian SoundCloud charts, he finally told his mom. She was supportive because she's Celine, but the public? They were vicious. People online were tearing him apart, mocking his tough guy image or making fun of his beard and his love for high-stakes poker. It was like he couldn't win. If he stayed quiet, he was a nepo baby living off his mom. If he tried to do his own thing, he was a disappointment to the family brand. He spent years caught in this weird limbo. He was trying to figure out if he was a professional poker player, chasing that adrenaline rush his dad loved, or a rapper, or just a guy who wanted to be left alone to drive his expensive cars in peace. He started sporting this thick beard and a more rugged look, which felt like a literal mask. It was a way to hide the pretty boy image the media had projected onto him since he was a toddler with long flowing hair. He was rebelling against a perfectionist standard that no human could actually live up to. And let's talk about the pressure of the René name. His dad wasn't just a father, he was a god-tier manager. People looked at Rene-Charles and expected him to have that same shark-like business instinct. But Rene-Charles was just a guy trying to process trauma. Every time he stepped into a casino or a recording booth, he was haunted by the ghost of who everyone thought he should be. He was navigating a midlife crisis before he even hit 25, trying to shed the tragic sun skin and find something, anything, that felt like it belonged solely to him. The world wanted him to be a carbon copy of his father, but he was just trying to survive being himself. He spent a lot of time away from the spotlight, dodging the paparazzi who were looking for any sign of a downward spiral. Every hobby he picked up was scrutinized. If he played too much poker, he was a gambler. If he posted a rap verse, he was lost. He was essentially being bullied by a global audience for the crime of not being his parents. That kind of constant external noise makes it almost impossible to hear your own internal voice. He had to fight through the static of being a celebrity child just to find the person underneath the headlines. It wasn't just about the music or the cards though, it was about the fundamental human need to be seen for who you are, not whose blood you carry. He spent years in the shadows of those Vegas neon lights, feeling like a supporting character in someone else's epic tragedy. He had to lose himself completely. The secret SoundCloud accounts, the late nights at the poker tables, the distance from the red carpets, just to start the process of building a version of Rene-Charles that wasn't defined by a funeral or a diagnosis. It was a messy, painful, and very public becoming that most of us get to do in private. And the fact that he came out the other side without losing his mind is a miracle in itself. And after years of drifting in that identity fog, 2025 and 2026 finally saw the prince stop running and start leading his family into a brand new era. Tragic no more. If you're looking at Rene-Charles now, you're not looking at that scared kid from the 2016 funeral anymore. You're looking at a guy who has finally stopped trying to outrun his father's ghost and instead started building a house with it. It's been a wild couple of years for him. And honestly, the music breakthrough everyone expected isn't exactly what happened. He didn't drop a pop album and try to be the next Celine. Instead, he found a way to be the man his family needed while chasing the high-stakes thrill that was in his DNA all along. Talk about the 2025 World Series of Poker, WSOP. This wasn't just some hobby or a way to blow off steam. Rene-Charles went deep, day 5 deep, competing for a $10 million top prize. People were stunned. Here was the son of a diva sitting at the table with the world's sharkiest players, keeping a stone-cold poker face while millions were on the line. But if you knew the history, it made perfect sense. He grew up playing heads up with his dad for $20 in their kitchen. For him, the poker table isn't a place to gamble. It's where he connects with Rene Sr. He's carrying on the strategic legacy his father loved, and in 2025, he proved he's a legit force in the game. He's not a celebrity guest at the table. He's a player who has earned the respect of guys like Daniel Negreanu. But here's the most big brother part of his current life. While he's chasing poker bracelets, he's also acting as Celine's right-hand man. He's basically her chief of staff. In 2026, as Celine continues her comeback journey after that epic 2024 Olympic performance, Rene-Charles is the one behind the scenes making sure the gears are turning. He's the buffer between his mother and the world. He's been her escort to the Grammys, her rock at documentary premieres, and the guy making sure the twins, Nelson and Eddie, are staying grounded while their mom battles her health issues. He stepped into that fatherly role permanently. He's the one passing down the Rene Sr. lessons to his 15-year-old brothers, teaching them how to handle the fame and the pressure without losing their souls. And the music? It's still there, but it's evolved. He's moved past the big tip secret rapper phase. In 2025 and 2026, he's been working more on the production side, the manager-producer vibe that his dad was famous for. He's still writing and recording under RC Angélil, but there's a new maturity to it. He's not trying to prove he can hit #1 on SoundCloud anymore. He's making music because he loves the craft. Celine is his biggest fan, often sharing how proud she is that he's found his own frequency. He's found a balance that seemed impossible 10 years ago. He's an artist, he's a professional poker player, and he's the anchor of the Angélil family. The tragedies of his life have been refined into a kind of quiet strength. You see it in the way he walks into a room now. The beard is groomed, the suit is sharp, but there's a grit in his eyes that only comes from surviving a decade of loss. He's not the son of a tragedy anymore. He's the architect of the next chapter. He's taken all that pain, the secret rap tracks, the nights watching his mom fight for her health, and the memory of his father's voice, and he's woven it into a life that is authentically his. He's the prince who finally realized he didn't need the crown to lead the family, he just needed to be René-Charles. He survived the shadows of the past to become the light his family relies on today, proving that even the heaviest legacy can be carried if you've got the right heart. He's finally stopped living in the shadow of a legend and started building one of his own. And honestly, seeing him win on his own terms is the best tribute he could ever give his dad, the man René-Charles chose to become. For years, the narrative around him was heavy. The grieving son, Celine's brave boy, Angélil's legacy. Every headline carried his father's name before his own. Every public appearance was framed through loss. And that kind of spotlight can either crush you or carve you into something stronger. For a while, it looked like he was just trying to survive it. Now, it's clear he's mastered it. There's something quietly symbolic about poker becoming his arena. Poker isn't loud. It isn't flashy. It's patience, discipline, emotional control. All the traits he was forced to develop far earlier than most kids. Sitting at that table in 2025, reading opponents, calculating risk, knowing when to fold and when to push all in, it mirrors the life he's lived since 2016. He learned how to keep his composure when cameras zoomed in on his tears. He learned how to protect his mother from added stress. He learned that sometimes the strongest move is silence. And off the felt, his growth feels even more profound. Those close to the family have said he's become the emotional barometer of the household. When Celine has strong days, he's celebrating quietly in the background. When her health challenges resurface, he's the calm center. Not dramatic, not panicking, just steady. That steadiness is what René Sr. built his empire on, and what René-Charles seems to have inherited in his own way. He also understands something crucial. Legacy doesn't mean imitation. He doesn't sing like his mother. He doesn't manage artists like his father did in the 90s. He doesn't try to recreate what once was. Instead, he absorbs the principles, loyalty, work ethic, strategic thinking, devotion to family, and applies them to a modern life that looks completely different from the one he was born into. That's evolution, and maybe that's why his story no longer feels tragic. It feels earned. He didn't rebel recklessly, he didn't implode publicly, he didn't spiral into the kind of tabloid chaos many expected from a kid raised in global fame. He experimented, sure. He tried music under a secret alias, he tested the waters, but he never lost his center. And now, as he steps deeper into adulthood, you can see that the foundation his parents built, even through illness, even through heartbreak, held strong. René-Charles isn't defined by the funeral footage anymore. He's defined by the quiet decisions he makes every day. To show up for his mom, to guide his brothers, to build his own career brick by brick, hand by hand. The tragedy shaped him, but it didn't trap him. And that might be the most beautiful twist of all. Because in the end, the boy who once stood beside a casket is now standing beside his family. Not as a child carrying grief, but as a man carrying purpose. Subscribe to this channel for real stories behind the headlines.